over here, I'm going to demonstrate exactly what I did to my Ficus Audrey that was able to get it to branch in under 3 months. Hi everyone, it's Marianne. Welcome to my Wasteless Life. In this video, I'm going to share with you how you can get your ficus plants to branch. Thank you so much for joining me today, and if you're new, this is my Wasteless Life, where I take you along my plant and sustainable lifestyle journey and share with you some of my tips and tricks along the way. So if you've been watching me for a while or even just recently, you know that I'm in the middle of my Monstera month. But I wanted to take a little bit of pause on that and show you how you can branch your ficus plants. I didn't plan to put out this video until later on in October, but then I thought that may be a little bit too late, especially for those who are in the Northern Hemisphere and want to try it out, because by then it will be the end of the growing season. So I thought I'm going to sneak this in, and don't worry, I'm still going to continue my Monstera series, and if you haven't seen any episodes of that yet, I will link it up here as well down in the description. But yeah, so it's actually very easy to get your ficus plants to branch. For the longest time, I couldn't figure it out, but there are a couple of tricks that you can do to get your ficus plants to branch. As you can see right here, I have my ruby ficus elastica and my ficus audrey, and over here I also have my ficus TINEKE. The tips and tricks on how to get your ficus plants to branch would work on any of your ficus plants, but I'll be demonstrating it on my ficus elastica plants. But I know for a fact that it also works for the FIDDLE fig. In fact, I saw this trick performed on a FIDDLE fig tree or a Ficus LYRATA, and it worked, so I decided to try it out on my ficus elastica. But it will also definitely work well with other varieties of ficus, like the Ficus altissima or any type of ficus plants that you might have. So there's a couple of ways you can get your ficus plants to branch. So for example, here in the Ficus TINEKE, I'm not going to do it because I do think this plant is still quite a bit small for me to get it to branch. But what you can do is, you could see the little bud in there that's starting to grow out. You could pinch that off, or if you don't want to pinch that off, you're a little bit apprehensive of just doing it by hand, you can use your pruning shears, your scissors, or whatever to just cut off that top, and that would encourage your plants to branch. However, with that pinching method, your plant is not going to branch out the way you exactly want it to. Although even with the second method, there's no guarantee it would branch the way you want it to, but at least you could dictate where you want it to branch. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But with this one, it would branch in many different ways, and you can't really predict it. It could just continue to grow up, which happened with my ruby ficus elastica. I accidentally pinched it off when it was a lot smaller, but it just continued to grow up straight. So this plant getting accidentally pinched off didn't really make it branch out. But if it does branch out, it might just branch out one way, which might not look aesthetically pleasing to you. But the best case scenario is it would branch out in 2 places, maybe even 3, and that would be great. But like I said, there's no guarantee with that if you just pinch it on top. And the second way that I'm going to show you is the method that I tried on my ficus plants, which I think is the better way to get your plants to branch the way you want to. Of course, it would still encourage branching in places that you didn't really intend to, but at least on the very spot that you want it to branch, it will definitely branch. Like with my Ficus Audrey over here, I did the method in this area, and it definitely pushed out a branch on this area. But then it also encouraged branching right over here, and I think it's also gonna have another branching over here. I'll make sure to insert close up so you can see a lot better. And I did the same thing with my ruby ficus elastica, but I did a slightly different method with the ficus elastica. But I think the method that I did with my Ficus Audrey is a lot better and a lot faster in producing results. For this method, you need a couple of things. One is a box cutter or a knife that's really sharp, and some isopropyl alcohol or anything that you could use to sterilize your cutter or your knife. So it's very important to sterilize the knife or the cutter that you're using, because you're going to be cutting into the stem or the trunk of your Ficus elastica or any of your ficus plants. You don't want to give your plant any viral disease that is transferred from the knife into your plant. So one of the first method that I did to make my Ficus elastica branch, which is not as effective as the slightly modified version that I'm going to show you after this one, is to basically make a cutting a third of the way into the trunk and just let it bleed, because ficus plants would have sap inside the trunk or inside the stem, and it would definitely bleed once you make a cutting into it. And actually that's a very good indication that you already cut deep enough, because you don't want to cut it all the way through or else you'll be chopping up your entire plant or tree. So I did that method back in January or February in a couple of different places in this plant, but as you can see, when I did it up here, nothing really happened in this area. However, at the bottom area of the plant, I did the same exact thing over here, and I think also above here. But the one at the very bottom, it actually did branch out, but it didn't branch out until like about 6 months later, maybe 8 months later. So let's say I did it in January. Right now it's September, so it's a little bit like more than 6 months before it actually did branch out. But it only branched out in one of the places I did the cutting or the notching at, but it didn't do it over here. But as you can see with my Ficus Audrey, I was able to successfully get it to branch, and this I only did maybe around summertime, middle of the summer, early summer, and it actually grew a branch here, and about to grow one over here in just less than 3 months. Before I left on vacation, I created a notch over here, and I think it is starting to produce a bud. So I was just watering my Ficus Audrey, and just an update on the notch. Here's my Ficus Audrey. I originally notched it over here, and it has stemmed or grown this branch, and it also started to grow a branch here, but it had a leaf, so I took out that leaf, which is this one, and it's also starting to grow here, to branch out here. So if this actually grows like this too, then I'm gonna take out that leaf as well, just to allow the branch to properly grow. So what did I do differently for this one? So over here, I'm going to demonstrate exactly what I did to my Ficus Audrey that was able to get it to branch in under 3 months. So as mentioned, you need a cutter or a knife that's really sharp and sterilized. So what you're going to do is actually cut a third of the way through. And again, once the sap comes out, you've already cut deep enough. And I'm just going to wipe that off again. And what you're going to do is to make another cutting or notching right above that, maybe like a 1/4 inch high. Roughly make it about the same size or length. Oh, I accidentally cut the leaf. So that's what I say. You have to be very careful and make sure that your knife is sharp so that you don't put a lot of pressure. And so when you cut it, you don't accidentally cut off the entire thing or cut off the leaves close to it. So as you can see, it's leaking a lot of sap. It's best to use gloves in this one, or wash your hands right away after doing this. The sap that's coming out here is actually toxic. At the very least, it would just make your fingers or your hands itch. At worst, it could trigger an allergic reaction. So make sure you are washing your hands or wear gloves while you do this. So as you can see, I'm just letting it leak out. You can wipe it out if you want to. But what you're going to do now is make additional cuttings on the side of the 2 notches that you just cut, and connect them to each other, and also get it to be a third of the way deep. All right. So you're basically going to cut a rectangle on the side of the stems, and then what you're going to do is to carve that out. And I know it feels very nerve-wracking to do this. I'm actually very concerned that I'm doing this on camera because I don't want to jinx myself, but I had bad experiences performing propagation stuff on camera that worked for me in the past, but just because I did it on camera, it no longer worked, and it actually damaged my plant. So hopefully I'm not jinxing myself by saying that. Okay, so essentially you want to remove the entire bark or the entire section that you just carved out, but again, don't cut all the way through the stem. You just want to cut a third of the way, essentially just taking off the main bark of the stem or the trunk of your plant. My hands are actually getting a little bit itchy, so I'm gonna go wash my hands and I'll be right back. Okay, so essentially that's what you do. Just clean up the area if you can. Do it very gently because again, you don't want to break off the stem. I mean, if you do, it's not the end of the world, but that's not what you want to happen. So it's gonna leak the sap for quite some time, so just let it leak it out. You don't really have to worry about it. It's okay if it gets into the soil. And the next step that I'm gonna show you is very optional. I didn't do it for my Ficus audrey and it branched out just fine. And like I said, in under 3 months. But you could also use this, which is the cakey cloning paste. So this one is mostly used on orchids, and I've used this on my orchids to get them to rebloom, but this one you could also use on your other houseplants. So this one is kind of like a rooting hormone, but it's not for root growth. Although it can also trigger root growth, because the last time I applied this to my Ficus elastica, the first time I tried to notch it, it might not have branched out here, but it did form roots on the stem or on the trunk. So what you're going to do using a cotton bud is get a healthy amount of it and just apply it on the place where you did that notching. So at the very least, what this would do is would provide a seal or a wax protection for your ficus plant, so that, you know, it would prevent getting any bacteria or pests as it tries to heal. Or second, it could actually help trigger that branch growth. But like I said, I didn't apply this to my Ficus audrey and it branched out just fine, but this is an optional extra step that you could take or use on your Ficus elastica that you're getting to branch to just help it branch maybe a little bit faster. So basically that's all you need to do, and after this it's just a waiting game. You take care of your Ficus elastica or your ficus plants the regular way. You're not going to do anything extra to it, and you just wait for the branches or the growth points to pop up. And like I said, with my Ficus audrey, it took about less than 3 months for it to happen. So we'll see what happens with this one if it branched out under 3 months as well. We are heading towards the end of the growing season, so it might not happen, but at least if you do it now, you know, come springtime, it would definitely grow that branch. And I wouldn't recommend doing this over the winter time or when your plant is in dormancy, because this is asking a lot or taking a lot out of your plants while it is in dormancy. So I would only recommend doing it right now. If you're watching this around September, early October, I think you can still do it if you're in the northern hemisphere. If you're in Australia or in the southern hemisphere, you can try this right now and your plant will do great, since the growing season is just starting in your region. But for us in the northern hemisphere, I wouldn't do this if you're very close to the end of the growing season. I would just wait until the next growing season or spring to do this. So those are the couple ways, maybe 2.5-ish ways you can get your ficus plants to branch. I do highly recommend this method because this one would almost guarantee that your plants would branch and would branch in the places where you want it to branch. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. And if you want me to make a Ficus elastica care video, I would definitely do it. Just let me know down in the comments if you're interested in that, and I'll make sure to have it up before the end of the year. If you want a FIDDLE fig or Ficus LYRATA care video, I already did one. I would link it up here and also down in the description. Go check it out. I have lots of tips and tricks on how to take care of your FIDDLE fig, especially if you're struggling with yours, and also talk about giving humidity for plants in general. Although I would say for the Ficus elastica, they're not really craving humidity a lot, even during the winter time. So if you're a beginner trying to get into ficus plants, I definitely recommend the Ficus elastica first if you don't know how well a FIDDLE fig would do under your care. But for me personally, the very first plant that I've got was the Ficus LYRATA or FIDDLE fig, and I even got it as a rescue plant. And it did well under my care, and it's not that I have special plant powers or a special green thumb. I think it just depends on the environment that you have. If you have the right environment for a Ficus LYRATA or any ficus plant, they would definitely do well under your care, even if you're just a beginner. But yeah, if you want a more extensive care tip video on ficus plants, especially the Ficus elastica, let me know down in the comments and I'll see what I can do before the end of the year. But yes, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found today's video helpful, and if you like it, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, I hope you subscribe. I come up with houseplants and sustainable lifestyle videos every week. And if you haven't yet, check out these videos up here until my next one. But until then, I see you, I appreciate you, take care of yourself and each other, and have a plentiful day. Bye!